gradual
Is that
Yeah.
It's wonderful classes, love calling.
I think I'd like to take that class. I'm very interested in like about language and stuff with it.
I don't know.
It's good. Like,
I don't remember names. So
they
you
could
keep-
be just so, yeah.
I think I'm really one. Oh, no.
I see you look on the microphone migrated down here. Is that how that works? You don't come to the committee meeting when you get a job?
Wow.
We're already jumping in for us. Like yourself,
Okay, well, if all of our panelists are done comparing each other's socks with each other, we've got some pretty cool ones here. I said we're all done, you guys.
There was Star Wars this morning, not as black.
Oh man, we could have had Star Wars.
Likely story.
Welcome everyone to Community Faith Conversations. This is the last in a series of conversations to learn more about one another's faith traditions here in the Green Bay De Pere area. The series is sponsored by St. Anne's Episcopal Church, where we are now, and Gathered in Faith Together, otherwise known as GIFT, which is an interfaith community of 20 different groups. And we have been providing interfaith worship opportunities typically around Thanksgiving and Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And we've been doing that for the past 15 years. For tonight's panel discussion, we will consider where do we go from here? We have so far in this series learned about a number of different religious traditions. And now we would like to explore what lies ahead for those communities in our area. My name is Alice Wood. I am subbing in today for Mary Lynn. She is on retreat. And I am here from, I'm a member of GIFT, and I'm also the organizer for a local group called Urantia Discussions, which is a group for people who study the Urantia book. I'm joined here with our panelists. Jody Figgins, can you wave? Thank you. She's the founder of Open Heart Mindfulness Community, which is a local Buddhist Sangha modeled in the Plum Village tradition established by Thich Nhat Hanh. She is an ordained lay member of his Order of Interbeing. I've also got here Rabbi Shana Bacharach. She is the Rabbi Emeritus of Congregation Knesset Israel in Green Bay. She attended the University of Oklahoma and the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York City. Green Bay has been her home for nearly 2 decades. We've got Father Tyler Richards, the rector at St. Anne's Episcopal Church. He holds a Bachelor's of English Literature from the University of Alabama and a Master's of Divinity from the University of the South at Sewanee, as well as a certificate in spiritual companioning from the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay. And last but not least, we've got Andrew J. O'Connor. He is an assistant professor of theology and religious studies at St. Norbert College, where he teaches courses on world religions, world scriptures, Muslim-Christian dialogue, and interfaith relations in the Middle East. He has extensively studied the Muslim faith and has presented at conferences in Egypt, Palestine, Jordan, Morocco, Tunisia, and the UK. Let's see, not joining us today. Some of you may remember Mary Close. She was here as a representative of the Quaker tradition earlier, but she could not be here tonight. So why don't we move on to our main discussion? Let's see. we'd like to talk about some of the challenges that the faith communities around here experience, both internal and external. So internal being those challenges that originate from within our traditions that people have to grapple with, and also external ones where we face challenges that have their origin outside of our communities. So why don't we start with the internal challenges? Could anyone please share with me some internal challenges that your community faces? And I guess I feel I should point out, Andrew, you are not a Muslim, but you are extensively studied in Islam.
I'm trying to speak in behalf of some of my friends what they would say. So I'll do it again.
So would anyone like to begin?
Good job.
Oh, sure, put me on the spot. What internal challenges is your faith tradition facing? It's hard for me to speak for all of Christianity, which is something that I try very hard not to do because the Episcopal Church is a very specific branch of Christianity. So I will instead speak for us as a denomination. The Episcopal Church has never been a large denomination. Historically, in any given population, it used to be that Episcopalians made up about 10% of a given population. Now that number is sitting somewhere around 4 or 5%. Like other mainline denominations within Christianity, we have seen decline in the last 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. Every single expert that you talk to has got a different idea about what is driving that decline in membership, what is driving that decline in people coming to us as a faith group. So that's one of the big internal struggles that we're dealing with. I think that the other thing that that happens inside of Christianity, who I said I wouldn't speak for everybody for, is learning how to communicate within our own tradition. We have branches inside of our own faith that have very different views about the same book that we all read, the same faith that we all profess, and yet it seems that there are a lot of things that we just can't get on the same page about. And so I guess the charitable way of saying that is it's hard to get everybody on the same page sometimes. So those are just a couple of some of the big things that we deal with.
It's interesting what you say about being on the same page, because there's an old saying like two Jews, 3 opinions. So yes, we have that as well. As far as some of the internal challenges that we have, the pandemic, most religions are very communal. It's not just coming for prayer. That's important, but people want to be with their community. And we haven't had that opportunity for so long that Zoom worship can be wonderful, but there's still, I remember the first time we met in person and it was like, oh my God, this is wonderful. I've missed you all, but that has made it harder and it's raised the community. And, the services on Zoom become shorter because of the different medium. So then you go back and you're in real life, but then people are getting used to the shorter service, etc. So many accommodations that we had to make. Now having to come back, there's putting the toothpaste in the tube isn't always easy, and to a large extent, we used to have. Of course, we don't have kids right now. It's an older congregation, but when I first came, and we had a really robust religious school, and the kids came twice a week, and they would come to services. But since over the decades, I've watched that decline also. As once upon a time, a parent would say, "No, you've got to go to Hebrew school." And it was like, "Oh yeah, no, he's got Little League, he can't go." And the regular world impinges a lot more as the years go by. And, as a parent, it was, no, you've got to come with me. course, I was teaching, so it made it doubly hard for them, but to not go. But there's a lot of competition out there that, oh yeah, religion's important. Yeah, God, we've got all that, but we've got these things we've got to do, these errands we have to run, these sports events, etc. So that's always been difficult. I'm sure generations past had similar issues, but I think it's maybe more so in the computer age. So much.
So I think I should begin by explaining a little bit about what it looks like when we do meet together. I don't know if everybody really knows or is aware of or understands with the community. We're a Buddhist group, a mindfulness community that welcomes people from all different faith traditions. And we're small. So we started out meeting we met at the Harmony Cafe. We started at Beacon House. We've been in a yoga studio, and then we moved to the Mothi Center on the UWGB campus. And we could have anywhere from 2 people to, I think the maximum might have been 12. So not a whole lot of people when we come together, but it's very intimate. We sit in a circle, we meditate, sitting meditation, walking meditation, and then we have what's called like the traditional sermon would be a reading or somebody talking about something either mindfulness or Buddhist based, and then we have discussion together, very, very close discussion from our heart based upon our practices and experiences. And to be able to rest in refuge and come together and make the connection and to support each other in our practice and how we can carry it into our daily life. And when we meet, the pandemic really hurt us. We went to Zoom, and it with meditation and silence, it wasn't the same. We would walk, turn off our video and then walk and come back together. And it takes somebody to facilitate, to have an informal leadership role, to set up the Zoom account, to commit to be there every week, to be in the space, to emotional, spiritual space of how they've led their day. So what we bring to the group, we have that place of refuge. And it takes a certain amount of energy. And sometimes that can get lost, that connection over Zoom. And other times I've been in different sanghas and online retreats from people all over the world where we still could feel it very deeply. So it's not like it disappears, it's just different. And with that the transition, we were losing people and we got small, and the people who were able to come and help guide us in meditation and to lead were falling off. And I had to make the hard decision that I didn't have the capacity to be able to do it every single week. And we stopped. We haven't been meeting for a very long time. And there are 3 of us who are actually meeting on Zoom with another Sangha in the Pacific Northwest. So it's really interesting and a completely different day and time. And I would love to be able to start it up again this spring in person soon. But my biggest challenge is finding a person who has that capacity to commit, to facilitate, to hold the space, have the energy, and to show up every week. And that can be hard. That's a hard commitment of, every single week. And I don't think we're there yet. So I'm waiting for myself to be in the space where I can do it. I did it for, our Sangha is 10 years old, and for at least the first 5, it was me. and even a lot of it, at least 50% for the rest of it, it was me. And no, it's just a transition. So there's that whole teaching on manifestation. If the conditions are right, it will manifest. And just being comfortable, and it looks different right now. So maybe we're not able to be in person the way we are. And I still have connections, and it's beautiful, the friendships, because we are close and together, to build those friendships and connections, still meeting outside and supporting each other in ways that aren't really in this communal circle, but it's still holding that circle. It's still the wheels on the I don't know what they're called on the Dharma wheel, but so that has been a challenge. And I could go on about some other things. I mean, there's beautiful benefits. But yeah, so I'm not quite sure how it's going to work going forward. And it's a lot of my own letting go and not trying to force things as well. Because I would love to say we're going to do this and make myself do it and start it all over again. But also knowing that I have to be in that space and to be able to offer that refuge and to be able to rest in that refuge when the time is right. So we'll see how it goes.
All right, so when it comes to answering these questions, I'm going to try to, just to make it a little more focused, answer in respect to like the Muslim community in Green Bay, mostly Somali, and then a little bit the community I'm more familiar with, which is like Muslims in Jordan. So you get two different perspectives for each question. And obviously COVID here was a huge force. Just churches were having debates across America about whether we should be meeting during COVID. Mosques were as well, imams were. So in fact, in meetings there, I was just in a mosque in Amman, Jordan, and I don't know if anyone has ever seen a Friday sermon at a mosque. It's called the khutbah. But you just get rows and rows of people packed together during the prayer. But here, everything was, there's tape, this massive mosque, and just tape everywhere showing where people could sit, where they could not sit. And so instead of being this mob of people all joined together, very communal, it was more like a grid, right? You just see lines of people like this being spaced out. And also in Jordan, usually each mosque has its own, it's called a muezzin, or a person who calls to prayer. And usually each mosque will have its own, or who either actually do the call to prayer or at least play like a tape or something in each mosque. But because of COVID, Jordan switched to, there's the one imam of their one main mosque who broadcasted for every mosque in the city now, just because of the loss of manpower. And just so less people had to go out and do those sorts of things. So that's COVID obviously impacted things there. When it comes to like the whole like declining thing, retention of numbers, Islam doesn't really have that problem. It's the fastest growing religion in the world. I think it's like 20, if Christianity is like 30% of the world population, Islam is 20 something, like 22 last time I checked or something like that, but it's growing the fastest. So in a few years, decade or two, Islam will probably be the largest religion in the world. And you'll still be tiny, correct, yep. But probably the most influential historically, small but influential. So it's still very fast growing religion. Conversion to Islam is growing. Birth rates are high, so future is looking good there. Which in terms of other internal challenges, I was thinking of in terms of like the Green Bay community is just sort of political problems in Muslim countries, other parts of the Muslim world, leading to like displacement of people. So should be familiar with the Syrian civil war, where Syrian refugees have fled into America and especially into Europe. And then here in Green Bay, we have a large Somali population because of the Somali civil war, which led to a lot of them here. If anyone ever wants to get the book, My First Winter or First Winter, it's written by a bunch of Somali girls, usually high school age or younger in Green Bay, and it's phenomenal. It tells about their experiences here. And especially like with snow for the first time, going from Somalia to Wisconsin. A lot of joyous things to read there, but also some really scary and sad things to read as well. So this sort of internal conflict within Muslim countries, largely to do with the spread of radical versions of Islam, which caused the displacement. People forget the number one victim of radical Islam is other Muslims who are forced to flee or be displaced or who suffer and the immediate effects there. And also it goes to the whole, Christians can't agree on anything. There's division within Islam as well. There's obviously Sunni Shia, but even within Sunnism and Shiism, there's internal debates as well. So no one's ever on the same page with the Quran there. And a lot of the problems there comes from the rise of what's called Wahhabism or Salafism, which is our BFF Saudi Arabia. They're funding this more literalist, scriptural focused literal version of Islam, a form of Sunni Islam, based on Wahhab. It's a whole other story. But when that spreads, because Saudis have lots of money, we pay them lots of money too, and they do a lot of horrible things with it sometimes. But when Wahhabism spreads, it kind of leads to more tension in different areas because this more literal version of Islam butts heads with more of this other versions, which tend to have longer histories in this localized versions of Islam, which are very enriched and tied to the culture of that area. And Wahhabism comes in, and then it becomes more division and conflict there. So it's sort of like the rise of these sort of more literalist versions, which cause tensions. But otherwise, Islam as a whole is growing, including in Green Bay. We're getting more Somali students here now, Afghans here as well. So we have more Islam in Green Bay is diversifying here as well.
I think probably for everybody, the world of the pandemic, which put us on Zoom, and I'm really grateful that we had Zoom. I think about past pandemics when people just had to isolate and didn't even have computers. So we had advantages, we had delivery systems, et cetera, but it has changed so much. And like in the story of Noah, after the rest of the world was destroyed and he seemed reluctant to get off the boat. He didn't know what he was going to find. I mean, everybody else was dead, him and his family and his animals. And I thought a lot about that through the whole pandemic because like as we emerge, actually gradually into the rest of the world, even in the town, it's different. Driving through parts of town that I haven't been through in a while, I'm still discovering. So there's a lot of rethinking that is going to be happening because of the transformation that hopefully we should grow from it, but growth isn't always easy.
Well, and following up what you all have talked about with the pandemic, I mean, I just sort of, it's been so much in the water that I didn't even think about it. But, here in our church, Christianity as a whole has had this whole crisis with, do we come to church or not? And do we go on Zoom? And of course, how many people are watching us right now on Zoom? Because 9, Jenny says 9 people are watching us on Zoom. And we updated all of our AV stuff so that we could be on Zoom. There were times when I had, people that were viewing from the West Coast, and there were times when I had people that were viewing us from Jerusalem, oddly enough. So we had this sort of congregation that escaped the bounds of De Pere, Green Bay, and was suddenly global, which I don't know how you do global pastoral care. I haven't figured that one out. I'll let you know. But, but that was just the practical things. Then it became like the really intimate things, like the sacraments for us. What do you do about communion? Well, you have to look back through, 2,000 years of Christian history and say, well, what did we do during the plague? What kind of theologies were active then that could still serve us now? And you saw Christian churches doing things like spiritual communion, where you would have people at home encountering, an image of a consecrated host and asking God to bless them through the image of that host. And even when we've come back together into one space, the question has come up, well, do we mask? Do we not mask? It's a small miracle that we're all sitting this close together and we're not wearing masks at the moment. And some of your congregations say, well, everyone should be masked. And some of your congregations say, no, nobody should be masked. And some folks in the middle say, well, maybe we should, take it on a case-by-case basis, and you're trying to figure out where everybody is. And none of it none of it was easy. And I guess for me, it felt both internal and external. So not to segue you or anything, but.
Yeah, thank you all. And so to segue, our next question is about external challenges. And I think it's a little bit tricky to have this question come next because so often the internal and the external challenges kind of are connected. Nothing exists in a bubble. So even our internal challenges have some kind of external influence. But to the best of your ability that you're able to separate those two, would anyone like to have a go at that one?
I don't have to go first.
You're still holding the mic,
Yeah. Pass it over. So you're up, Andrew.
All right. So in terms of external challenges for Muslim groups, I think the number one issue, which was something that was said to me by a friend in Jordan, was that Islam has a PR problem because it's Islamophobia. So it's this sort of struggle to share what Islam means and what Islam means to the billions of Muslims around the world versus what most people in the West thinks Islam means. So prejudice against Islamophobia being sort of the irrational fear of Islam or Muslims, xenophobia against Muslim populations. So trying to fit in these diaspora communities is one of the number one external challenges facing Muslims around the world, especially those in Green Bay. So for the Somali populations here, again, if you look at this book, First Winter, you have these little girls telling stories about them having other students trying to take off their hijabs during class, or a student at Walmart and some woman making fun of her at a Walmart for wearing a hijab. Then the girl actually explained what the hijab meant. The girl felt bad, started crying. It's a beautiful story. But this is one of the number one issues, besides the winters in Green Bay, is sort of distrust of Muslims generally, ignorance of Islam. I mean, I've seen a lot of my own fair share of Islamophobia when I've been a Muslim, but I've read it in students' papers. I've seen relatives say things to me. And I often think to myself, like, they know I've been spending 12 years studying this, and they say things to me as if I don't know. And it's the whole story. So I was like an uncle or something. But, right, so this sort of like consuming what we see in the media and everything on the news with the civil wars in Syria and terror radical groups, and then wanting to like place all Muslims in that same box is what most Muslims, and I didn't Muslim meet in America will have stories about Islamophobia too. For example, often I'm on a flight for a conference, which is usually a conference on the Quran or something with Islam. I will like read the Quran to remind myself, oh, what was the paper about? Oh, it's on this chapter here. I'll reread that chapter, get myself ready for the presentation, etc. I've never had any problems with that on a flight. But my friend, who happens to be a Lebanese Australian, and in fact, he's a Christian Lebanese Australian. He's married to an American girl, was on a flight. He was reading the Quran, even though he's a Lebanese Christian, Maronite Catholic. He just reads the Quran for its poetry in the Arabic. He did it once on a flight to Wisconsin and then flew back to like North Carolina. The next day, the FBI showed up at his door saying, someone said you were reading the Quran on the plane. Like reading a scripture on the plane with the FBI, someone called the FBI on him. Like who else has to deal with that? I mean, it's ridiculous. Same thing, I go with my friend Murad, who's Egyptian, also Egyptian Christian. When we go with like security, which one of us gets the random check? It's not me, because he's brown, he's got the beard and everything. So that's sort of like prejudice against someone who looks Arab or Muslim generally is a very real thing. And but it's not just the Muslim communities in America who deal with this. Even within Jordan itself, like organizations in the Arab world are sort of in part of this conversation as well, trying to teach the West and teach the whole world about Islam, even though they're far away from.
I have a question about the local community.
Yes.
How comfortable are the Green Bay Muslims mixing with the rest of the community?
I'll just repeat the question so it gets mic'd for the virtual viewers. You asked how comfortable is the local Muslim community with living in our community. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the ones that I know are very comfortable. Like Saeed Hassan is the founder, one of the co-founders and runners of an organization called COMSA, which is a organization that helps tutor Somali students in like the Green Bay school system. And he's like, he comes to my class everyone's like all the time. He's very engaged with different agencies around the Green Bay. I send my students there to volunteer, and the students love it. They have a blast. I think the current imam of the mosque is shy. Like I think he's just new. He's still getting used to everything, and so he's a little shy there. But my experiences have been positive. It's just that they're, I think some of them are still, the newer Somalis are so very much a culture shock. And it's cold, they don't go outside. But I think the younger population is, I mean, we're starting to get more and more Somali students at St. Norbert College, becoming more and more engaged with the surrounding area. Yeah. And I think that's everything I was going to say. Yeah, want to go?
Yeah, it is hard to separate the internal from the external here. So, so I'm looking at some of the examples where like the reduction of volunteerism is a little bit of what I was talking about when we come in to have people. So there are Dharma teachers in our tradition. They're lay members. I'm a lay ordained member. And then we have monastics who are at the monastery. They live, they teach, and it's their life. And with the rest of us, like we have our full-time jobs and our families and come in and to have the time to commit to the Sangha and to give to the Sangha. In the Green Bay area, we don't have a Dharma teacher. The closest Dharma teacher that we have who they usually have a larger commitment is, I think, on the south side of Chicago. There's Jack Lawler, and I think he's still working as well. So like a resource to phone, but not to be able to come in and to support and to bring a draw and to have more people come in and try it out. And I think there's a misperception of what we are. People often say that Buddhism is a philosophy and not a religion because we don't worship a deity. And we do have people coming in. We draw people from all different faith backgrounds, and we have people coming in to sit with us and practice with us, sometimes who have certain challenges in their own life, and it can start to turn into a little bit of a therapy session or have that feel. So being able to hold those boundaries and the guidelines in a kind, compassionate, loving manner while still, protecting the safety and the integrity of the Sangha can be a challenge. And communicating that in a lovely manner. And a lot of us are white. We're white, older women in our group. And we had a couple of men who come in. We have one regular man who comes. And I say come, we're not meeting right now, but there is a different group that we meet twice a month that's a little kind of like a break off from our Sangha, but it's not the Sangha. So attracting younger community, that's one of the reasons why we went to the Mothi Center at UWGB. We're hoping to get students to come in, we'll welcome students, and they would come and observe us. And that was really uncomfortable. I'm like, please don't sit and just watch us meditate. That's just weird. so sit.
We have people that come to the synagogue. They may not be participating in the service, although sometimes they do, but at least there's stuff going on. People that are meditating are just sitting. That's it.
So I would tell them, you can sit with us and just try to give them a little guidance and have them walk with us and participate instead of being off in a corner. So, just kind of that observer role so that's a challenge of how to communicate. Like when I think about relaunching our website and everything, how to communicate best in terms of who exactly we are. And But I would say that that's kind of, we don't, I haven't experienced, of course, I don't look differently, right? I'm wearing my brown jacket right now, but I don't wear this every day. I mean, I don't look different. So the discrimination in that aspect isn't there. And I think I said this in the first session that we had, it's actually been very, very welcoming. I mean, the communities and the different faith groups in town, it's just been so welcoming. And it's been wonderful that way.
Now, when it comes to bigotry, I know that bigotry has been really flourishing in the last few years. It's been hard for Muslims. Anti-Semitism has been way on the increase, very much on the increase. I'm sure you probably remember that little synagogue in Texas not that long ago. The rabbi welcomed somebody that needed food and ended up being held hostage all day. But even at that, it's we're very lucky in America still, because there are places in the world where it is a lot more, where it is dangerous to be Jewish. I have to add, though, something I'm very proud of. Ukraine used to be a place of horrible pogroms and horrible violence towards Jews, and they have a Jewish president and a Jewish prime minister. It's evidently changed a lot in the last century, and that just is just wonderful. That's my little aside, because places do change. Here, when it comes to external challenges, demographics change. We have fewer Jews that want to live in smaller cities. That's always my preference, but many are going to places with more Jews. The more they do that, the fewer Jews there are in the hinterlands. So a lot of us in small synagogues are isolated from the rest of the Jewish world. The internet has been wonderful for that. Fear, people not understanding the faith tradition, or when you brought up people, are you a religion? Are you this? You can't describe Judaism as a religion, we're a religion, we're a people. You can be a Jew and not think about religion. It's a way of life, it's an identity, but that varies so much. So there's no easy description for that. Actually, I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm leaving out. I'm sure there is, but I mean, the world just is presenting us with so many issues. But the last question, I'm just going to touch on this, is what is wonderful about today's world is religions do work together. And Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Muslims, we can be together. We can talk religion, and we can see what we share. And it really is more, I think, that way. But there are a lot of challenges. But that's always been that way. We just have different challenges than our ancestors did. We have challenges, and the next generation will have a whole different set. So I wish them lots of luck.
External challenges for Christianity. Christianity has a PR problem. Yeah.
People associate Judaism with people in black hats that are very, very orthodox, that are a tiny minority. Christianity has a PR problem. Islam has a PR problem. Buddhism, I don't know if they have a PR problem or not enough people know about it and what it encompasses. So,
Yeah. So, and with that PR problem, it's multifaceted. One, you have particular sects of Christianity that want to speak for the entire religion, that want to make prescriptive statements that apply to every single iteration of who we are as a faith, which has led people to believe that all Christians are anti-LGBTQIA+, which is simply not true, or that and gun lovers, or that we're all politically conservative, or that we're all politically liberal, or that we're all politically undecided, or that we're all fill in the blank. This idea that one sect of Christianity has the right to speak for all sects of Christianity is a big PR problem. Along with that is the politicalization of Christianity. This, and I don't have to tell anybody where this has shown up the most in the last, 8 years, but the faith being hijacked to put political figures into power, to take political figures out of power because they didn't vote the right way, or they have a different standing on social issues than somebody thought that they should have. And so, a certain sect rises up and says, well, you can't vote for them because they're in this position on a social issue. Well, not all Christians feel that way, and some Christians view things with a gradient. Well, maybe you have this position about this, but you're somewhere else about something else. So there's the politicalization that our faith is sometimes used not so much as a way to encounter God or a way to better embrace our neighbor, but as a way to get elected. And it ticks me off because that's not what our faith is about. Jesus had zero love for the empire. Jesus had zero love for the political forces at work, and that's not where he was. He was with the marginalized. He was with those that were on the edges of society, those that were sick, those that were wounded, those that needed healing, and was commanding those that were in power to take a look at the people around them, saying, well, the story with Lazarus, or the rich man and Lazarus, who stepped over the man who was literally laying in his doorstep, covered in sores. The dogs were licking his sores, and the rich man just kind of said, oh God, the trash is in the way, as he steps over him. And it wasn't, Jesus saying, step over the poor. It was Jesus saying, this is what happens when we neglect those that are literally on our doorsteps, and we forget, Spoiler, not nice things happen to the rich man. So there's that. Volunteerism, yeah. Churches are always looking for volunteers, but that also ties into a problem that we have with attracting a somewhat younger demographic. As the generations tick down, what I have found inside of people's reaction to Christianity is that sometimes younger people don't want to come anywhere near a church because when they walk in the door, they're mobbed by all the other people saying, oh, good, you're here today. Won't you take over running the children's ministry? Won't you take over running the music ministry? You're young. You've got time to fix the church roof or to change the church sign. And so, you see a young person walk into a church, and it's not long before we're trying to get them signed up to do something. And it causes people to stay away. There's also the idea that Christianity is all about getting someone in the pew so that we can get inside of their wallet and get their money. And it's like, there's so many misunderstandings about the faith and so many conceptions about who we are as a people that miss out on what this faith is really about. And some of those do come from external sources. Some of those do come from internal sources that we've allowed to sort of propagate and to carry on without standing up and saying, Westboro Baptist doesn't actually speak for all of us. The Episcopal Church isn't actually the only iteration of Christianity. And there's something about Christianity that we view the diversity within our faith as threatening to one another, instead of saying, oh, you read the text that way. Well, I read it this way. Isn't that interesting that even within our faith that we can embrace our diversity? So I don't know if that's internal or external, but it's there.
It's really hard to make a distinction anymore. And thinking about what you're saying. There are so many misconceptions. Sometimes I think there's a willfulness because I hear people say, well, I don't want to come because of this reason or that reason. Then that you discover, well, that's actually not the reason at all. Or one of our members, if people aren't coming, well, so why haven't you been to services? And this one was one of my favorites because, well, the rabbi, her sermon topics, I mean, she talks about stuff like skin disease. Well, actually, that was, because I went back through all my sermons, like, I don't do that. However, there is a Torah portion that deals with leprosy or skin disease. And it's a metaphor for the way you speak, that basically evil speech shows on your outside. And so I didn't talk about skin at all. I talked about the way we talk to each other. But yet when somebody says, why, I mean, nobody's going to say, well, really, I'm totally apathetic or I don't want to be bothered. I don't know why people are afraid to say that. And people also, part of our culture is to be busy, very, very busy. It's almost like a status. I am so busy. And that really is a big trap. So that's got to be hard for all of the groups.
This is more of like a universal religious thing, less so particular to Islam. But at St. Norbert College, I also teach courses. Courses on Intro to Theology for all first-year students. And part of their assignments is to write what we call a bookend essay, where for second week of class, they write their religious autobiography. So will we raise a certain religious tradition, yes or no? What factors have shaped religious beliefs that do it where it is today? What's the relationship between faith and doubt and things like this. And every semester I read them and I feel like joy, but also like sadness and like the things that students are going through these days, like trauma within religious traditions, real hurt and pain caused by churches and other religious backgrounds that they have, where they're just not interested anymore. Sometimes pretty understandably. And I think that there's a growing disinterest in religion because it's seen as irrelevant because they have busier things, like they have other things to do, they seem more pressing and relevant. And not just religion as such, but even just the idea to my goal is to make them introspective. Like, can you think about what you believe and why, and aspire to a life that's incorporates introspection and reflection and deep thinking and the commitment to goodness. That's my bar. Sometimes it's hard to reach that bar. I can't just make them all into good Catholics or something like that. That would be impossible. But so just the religion as a whole, one of the external pressures of all traditions is making it seem relevant to people's lives today, because religion is seen as a source of pain and conflict and anxiety, whereas they have other pressing concerns. Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Can I follow up on that?
And as a leader within Christianity, one of the things that I sort of watch the television and hold my breath about is when the next abuse scandal is going to come out, and how the larger Christian world is going to respond to it. For years it was and still is emerging. The sexual abuse that comes out of the Roman Catholic Church. And then the newest thing that has come about is the essentially the murder of indigenous children by religious schools, of which the Episcopal Church has a share in that too. We ran religious schools like everybody else. The mistreatment, the abuse, the denigration of LGBTQI plus persons. And the fact of the matter is that we need to get to a place where we can look at that and say, we are complicit in these things. These are things that happened on our watch, and be able to come to a place of repentance and ownership of that and say, yep, that's something that we did. How can we make amends on that? And one of the most powerful things that I ever did in my ministry was, and it was my first parish that I ever worked in, is I went to a meeting of an LGBTQIA plus organization at a small liberal arts college in Central Alabama, the University of Montevallo. If anybody in Alabama is watching this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I went to this meeting and I sat down and I looked at them and I said, you know, there's a place for you inside of Christianity. And I want you to know that as a minister, I want you to know that God loves you. The look on those kids' faces to know that there was an iteration of the faith that looked at them just like everybody else, just as lovable as everybody else, was profound. Because in the cultures within Alabama that they had come out of, they were dirty, they were ugly, they were completely sidelined and mistreated. And for someone to tell them that God loved them, you would have thought that I had handed them $1 million check. And then they wanted to know like what kind of beer I drank and like what I did on the weekends. And I demonstrated that my collar actually does come off. And they thought that was funny. But, you know, that I eat more Taco Bell than any person probably should. But, you know, approaching them and saying there is a place for you is something that was incredibly redemptive, incredibly powerful for me to be able to be, you know, a representative of my faith that said the door is open for you. And I think that's, you know, every tradition has to come to their own place about how we deal with things like that. But being able to look at ourselves objectively and admit our mistakes, you know, is, at least for Christianity, is something that we have to be able to do.
That's true for all of us, and that's part of our changing world and mores that, and especially in a world where there's more and more pressure on schools to not teach anything that will make your children uncomfortable. Having grown up in Mississippi, which I know Tyler can relate to, being from Alabama.
They always put us next to each other.
Yeah.
Keep the Southerners one place.
Well, into Dixie. I know the version of history I was taught was so bad, and I just hoped for so many years that they'd grown out of that. But now they're trying to make that the law all over the place. You know, slavery is an okay thing. Don't feel bad about it. I mean, it's really incredible the stereotypes that are out there and the blinders that people put on, that we could think that God created people in God's image, except for this group. You know, God created homosexuals, lesbians, transsexuals, etc. Like, I guess people don't want to think that's God's image, but it is. So, yeah, that is really, I'm glad you said that.
Well, you know, we've talked a little bit about the ways that people have been hurt by religions. We've talked about seeing religious groups in an us and them kind of a framework. But we're here tonight because we do not see ourselves in an us and them framework. We really see ourselves as being people who can coexist. And so right now I'm wondering what kinds of opportunities are there for religious communities in general, or more specifically in the Green Bay area, to work together?
You have to come first.
Well, you know, our interfaith group gift, events like this, all of that does feed into, and I know frequently at the synagogue, we've had church groups come in, sometimes during the week or sometimes for Sabbath service for us. And we, you know, and when we do that, you know, if they'll say afterwards, they'll sit through the service, and but then afterwards, you know, ask any questions you want, Sometimes it takes a little while, so in the Torah scroll. So, what we can do to educate people, and there is a strong interfaith community in this, in Green Bay. So all of that is so, I don't know if you could ever have enough, and then we run into the problem. As actually with gift, is like, when do we stop? Because when do we go overload ourselves? But when we get together too, what we realize, and this is when I've been with Muslim groups, realizing that timing of their prayers, we have 3 times a day that we're supposed to pray. Muslims have more, but we all do that. And realize, and one night I'm listening to, I forget what the occasion was, the men were together, the women were together. The Orthodox Jews do that. And as I'm listening to them pray in Arabic, it was almost like listening to Hebrew prayer. And I was feeling really at home. And, I remember, I think the fast ended when there were 3 stars out. It was like, there was sunset was one benchmark, and then about an hour or so later was another, and it's like Sabbath ends, 3 stars, not at sundown. And this timing of this meal was like, this is on Jewish time. You realize it's like, I know that Buddhism has a different concept. I won't say a concept of God, but a different concept. But still, there is this overriding, and I don't know how to describe it because it's really beyond description, right? But we all do believe that, and that the basis is love. And I think for all of us, it comes down to the essence of what we do, to where there's 4 of us that, 3 from Gift, one's not, but 4 clergy that we go to, doing breakfast together for years. It started with Mary Lynn and I. And last week, I was with one, and we were talking about Lent. I said, well, you could give that up for Lent. And then I thought, that's really chutzpah, nerve that I'm telling my friends what giving Lent suggestions, because, but a lot of that becomes, it's not what I believe, but it's what they believe, and it's just as special. And that's the beauty of religion.
I don't know what I want to say and answer the question, but just in response to what you were saying, Shana, it's to me that the common golden thread is it's love. It's love and this interconnection and things that are greater than ourselves, that we are all one. And yeah. And I love how Gift comes together, and we have a couple services over the years, and we've come in, and there's tomorrow night, I believe it's tomorrow night, I can't remember where, at St. Matthew's. Is that a Catholic church?
Yes.
A Catholic church in Green Bay? I don't know what time, I know I can't go. I'm very disappointed I can't go, but there's a gathering, a vigil for all the hurt and suffering that's going on with the war in Ukraine, and at 5:30, yes. And I'm thinking of all those suffering in Yemen and all the other places in the world as well. I mean, so coming together and doing things like that, and maybe deepening it within our community. So what are our Somali neighbors struggling with right now that we can help? What is happening in the Jewish community in Green Bay with this discrimination? being there. I love the breakfast. I want to get in on that, but I work in the morning. But, you know, to foster these connections where we can really be talking and how can our communities help and support, be it, is it diapers? Do you need food? Do you need somebody to speak out or to accompany somebody to the grocery store or things like that in the community and see each other beyond the walls of our churches, beyond our houses and come in the community. And I love that breakfast. I think that's where things are born. They're born at those little, that's intimate levels like that. So.
Our opportunities to work together. So I'm going to give some sort of answers to do with Muslims in Green Bay and the world, but also some of my own thoughts too, as somebody teaches theology at a college. But within Green Bay, it's a very practical answer there. Like everybody wants to get to know Muslims, like they should volunteer with COMSA. COMSA is a great organization. I'm gonna give a little plug for them now. Like that works with Somali students and now Afghan students as well. COMSA, COMSA. They're always looking for volunteers. I've sent students there before. They always have a great time, but just helping Somali students both like with their English, but also adapt to American culture and American life, and they find it very rewarding there. And at some point, there's be more Afghans who they need help with as well. I actually just bought a textbook on Dari, to try and learn Dari and work with them, but I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon. But I also want to make a plug for like the wider world as well. And I often have people ask me like, you know, where are the good Muslims? You always hear about the bad ones, but why aren't the good ones speaking up too? It's like, they're there. You just never talk. People never talks about them. There are organizations all over Jordan, for example. I'm sure in other countries as well, but I know Jordan the best, that are like focused on interfaith cooperation. I lived in Jordan for a year with a group called the RIFS, the World Institute for Interfaith Studies, they do like education programs all around Jordan. I went on a hike once with high school students who are Christians, Muslims, Baha'i, atheists in Jordan, and we talked about religion in this hike. It's a historical trail. They do big programs with the Vatican every other year where they go to Rome or Vatican comes to Jordan and meets with the prince, and they do this whole formal dialogue thing, which I was able to be a fly on the wall for that once. And it was fascinating because it was almost like there was more disagreement among the Muslims in the group than there were between Christians and Muslims at the time. So it's just a really fun discussion to see how much diversity there was. But these groups are active, like trying to do service projects, encouraging peace and education all through the whole Middle Eastern world as well. I also want to make something I told me last semester. I can't take credit for this idea. This is not my idea. I had a visiting professor come to my class who was on campus for a big public lecture. And he came talking to my students and talked about interreligious dialogue as like a wheel. And so it's a wheel, and every religion, or like a pie, every religion is like a slice on that pie right now. You see Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, whatever. Probably lots of slices on that wheel. But every religious tradition has those on the outside of the wheel who want to be as far away from everybody else as possible. The pie is the thickest, far away from the center, right? So the extremists in every tradition, those think that their slice of the pie is the best, they want to be on the edge with everyone else. But any of us who come down toward the middle of the pie, where the slice, the picture of pie that gets thinner, toward the middle, we're all in our own places of the pie, but we can be united on like a common goal or common cause. And this guy was arguing that when we're coming together to like fight injustice, to work for a better world and common good, a just society, whatever slice of the pie we're on, we're basically right there in that same spot. And students loved it. I thought it was a really great analogy there. Right, that there is room for, you can stay in your tradition, you don't have to compromise your beliefs or change your beliefs or whatever it is, and still be committed to this common good, having a common goal of justice, making a better world, whatever that might be, love, compassion, etc. No, I think it's a good pie.
In Buddhism, Thich Nhat Hanh also called it a fruit salad. You don't want to limit yourself to just one.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I have to add to that is ditto. I think y'all said it really well that, you know, I think as members of our different different traditions or different religions, one of the things that we do is speaking up when there is unspeakable evil in the world that we look at and can objectively say, this is something that is absolutely out of control and something that is hurting people. And, we know what's floating around in the air. Some guy named Vladimir Putin, who's decided that Ukraine needs to be his new trophy and is bombing civilians and is bombing maternity homes and is just wreaking havoc on the Ukrainian people. Speaking out about things like that and saying this is an objective evil that is present in the world, and how do we join together with other faith groups that are offering their prayers and their intentions and their meditations towards making change, and then doing something, concrete in the world, like you were talking about, Andrew, getting together with people that are different than us and learning about each other and telling each other our stories and as Mr. Rogers would say, just being good neighbors. We're watching a lot of Mr. Rogers at my house right now. And I really like the image that you gave, or that you presented from your visiting professor, about this idea of the pie, of realizing that we're all in there and we can be strongest at the center, and realizing that there is a center. There is a place where we can all, have our feet in the same pool and say, and leaning into that strength and not being afraid of it. I think that's a part of it, is like, well, can I be friends with a rabbi, or can I be friends with an imam? Am I allowed to do that? Well, I'll go to a mosque, but I'll zip my vest up so nobody sees that I'm wearing a collar. Understanding that so much of our lives should be geared towards understanding and seeking the common good. Like you were saying, Jody, the golden thread that runs through all of it. And realizing that love and dignity and our common humanity is really something that we can all grab a hold of and say, well, yeah, we can all definitely agree on that, so that's an awful long way to say ditto. So
That's, this is also true. It's what unites us. And when you said that about being strong, that is something that is so important. And actually that's something that Buddhism, that I had back from my days of spending a lot of time in Buddhist meditation, reminds you of being centered and having to weather storms, that it's so easy to get so upset and so panicky. And I can think of a number of biblical places where like the panic is the worst thing in the world. It's a curse. But when we stand up strong, and I think we're all inspired by the Ukrainians standing up so strong, and the reminder that, yes, we can all do that. We can protect our own country and values the same way. And that is so important. And to do it out of love and kindness is just literally God-given, a blessing.
I would add just one more thing, if you guys don't mind me piping in for a minute, but I'm the moderator, so I'm pretty sure I get to make the rules. I hosted a discussion a while back at a spirituality center. And it wasn't a bunch of Urantia students there. It was, I was there with just a couple of other Urantia students, and then everyone else was just coming in because they were curious. And a number of the people there identified themselves as being Christian Buddhists. And so, here up on this stage, I identify as a Urantia student, you identify as a Christian, down the line. And we are all comfortable with each other. And when we participate in this larger interfaith movement, which goes beyond what we are doing here, we are showing to people who might be leaving their religious community that they can explore other ways and find something that works for them. That this isn't just, it's not just a matter of serving our own little community. It's not just a matter of growing our own community or, maintaining the size of our community, but it's also about showing our comfort with each other, showing our appreciation of each other, so that when people are looking for something that works for them, they feel like they can go and find it.
Yeah, and to speak to that, one of the big things that I learned through studying to be a spiritual companion, the way that sort of I'm losing my words. The way that sort of interacts with my faith as a Christian priest is what I do when someone comes to me and they're struggling with their faith, and when it's a member of someone of my own faith that's coming to me saying, I'm thinking about going and exploring Islam. And my brain goes, wait, what? Hang on. Because within that conversation is grief for me as a Christian minister, but it's curiosity for me as a human person. And it's this feeling of needing to support that person as a spiritual companion. And all of those sort of forces kind of press in on you and go, but wait, what is inside of this for this person? And trying to balance those forces and say, we can work together, we can talk with each other, we can experience each other's faith and explore. And ultimately it comes down to the individual, where they find themselves seeing God, or where they find themselves experiencing the divine. And it's been an interesting thing for me to explore as a spiritual companion, is how do I walk with people that are on that journey?
Well, thank you all for spending time with us throughout these past several months. If any of you have any thoughts for future discussions or discussion series that we might do along these same lines, please let us know. We've got snacks and beverages out in the
parish hall.
parish hall.
Yeah. Before we take off, hey, Jenny, do we have any questions from? No questions from the interwebs tonight. Okay.
Any questions here? Okay. Well then, thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Alice, for coming in and being our moderator tonight. And I just want to say thanks to these folks for showing up for these and being a part of this. I feel like I'm part of a richer community having participated in all of this.
Do you want to say something?
The French writer Camus wrote a very nice book called La Peste, which is what we're going through now. And during that book, everybody got together. So I was thinking maybe the Lord, good God, might continue to give us La Peste, so maybe one of the days we're not together.
Yeah.
And have each other, because we're going to need each other. I think only out of need will, and the need will then become love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, God bless you all.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
She left,